Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Tuesday Night Jazz at the Church. My name is Kelby McNair. Thank you so much for joining. This is a very exciting evening for me. I get to sit down with one of my longest and dearest musical friends, the wonderful Brooke Maxwell. Brooke and I have been making music together for, let's see, maybe close to 20 years now. And Brooke is one of the most enigmatic and passionate, heartfelt, fantastically wacky musicians I've ever met. A wonderful piano player, tenor saxophonist, composer, singer, you name it. So we get to sit down with Brooke and hear a little bit about his life in music, the music that inspires him, some of what inspired him growing up. With no further ado, let's dive right into the music here with Brooke Maxwell. And for those of you joining us for the first time, this is our way of coming together where we can't get together physically in the same space. We can get together and share some music, some stories, and some laughs and some good times. So thank you so much for joining us for Tuesday Night Jazz at the Church online. And welcome to my dear friend, Brooke Maxwell. Brother Rock, how are you doing tonight, Brooke?
Hey, great. Nice to see you. Thanks for having me, Calby.
Hey, thanks so much for joining me. I'm so excited.
Yeah. Well, it's a strange time and it's a strange way to meet, but it's great to see you in reals almost.
Yeah, I know. I was remarking to someone earlier that if there was a time that I had to miss one of our PAGS dates, Brooke and I have played at PAGS for mm, quite a long time,
Oh
and it would
wow.
be such uh, a fraught decision to miss one of our gigs together. And now, now I don't know how many we're at and up to date. I should be chalking them off on the
Yeah,
wall.
I know.
Like,
It's yeah.
but this is
Uh,
really great. And you're one of the first people I thought of when we started doing this fantastic kind of exploration. If I recall correctly, you were the first artist that we brought into Tuesday Night Jazz to get a standing ovation from the audience.
well.
Mm-hmm.
All
Mm-hmm.
right. Well,
High, high praise
high
indeed
praise.
from a very discerning, serious audience. And I think part of the way was that you were able to connect with them in a very real way where you were just sharing your love of music. I wonder if we can start this off by just, I want to say that and ask you, what is that?
My love of music. What is my love of music? I don't. It's been one of those things I've been so feeling constantly fortunate to have it as a part of my life because it's just always been been a part of my life, I guess. I didn't grow up in like my parents weren't musicians or anything, but I was very fortunate to be offered like piano lessons when I was a kid and a record collection of my parents that we had access to and yeah, like I was sort of a spoiled, not exactly spoiled, but we were a supported family in terms of lessons. I got to have saxophone lessons if I wanted to, you know, when I was of age in middle high school, really. So yeah, so
And
music's kind of always been there, and I didn't really. My mom played a little bit. I think my dad played a little bit of trumpet and had a guitar that he hacked around on. My mom played a bit of piano. Apparently, my great grandma was a singer, and I didn't know her as a singer, but I just heard some stories about her. And I've got family members everywhere who are all like lovers of music. So I was, again, like uncles giving me mixtapes on a fairly regular basis to check this out. And my parents were professional garage sailors. I would describe them as like, so they didn't go to church on Sunday, but every Saturday morning they got up and went to garage sales. And so there was no shortage of records in the house. My dad was really excited about bringing home a whole bunch of records that he found at the garage sales. So I have like 50 copies of Trooper's Greatest Hits. But he wasn't the most discerning record buyer, but he was very enthusiastic and very supportive. So we always had records and things we could play. And I remember my uncle gave me the Walkman. You know, when Walkmans came out, like it was about 1985, just
yeah.
about the age just when I started to mow lawns. Like just that was a perfect storm. A Walkman and a lawnmower and like two cassettes or whatever that was. I think it was Hit Express.
Well, maybe this is actually the whole roots of the thing. Now you also are, man, we'll get into this more later, but of considerable wit, and you're a very literate musician who loves not only stories in music, but also puns. And I don't even know if that's the right word for it, but your record label, I think, is it still Jean Referee Music?
Yes, yes, it's John Referee music.
So Jean,
Jean
Jean,
Referee.
Jean, genre free music. So
Genre
this is
free
this
music.
is maybe that has to do. because you have a love of music that is genre free.
Yes.
You listen to music. Maybe that has to do with your parents' garage sailing.
I think so. Or maybe like I just because I didn't grow up in a specific environment. I mean, here we are. We're on a jazz Tuesday night jazz program talking, and I don't know if I really think of myself as a jazz musician. Partially because I've been around jazz musicians and know enough to know what that is, and it just takes such a level of devotion and focus in that specific environment. And I I was introduced to jazz about in grade 9, but I can't say I connected with it immediately. And because we were in a small town in the 80s, we didn't have access to the internet or any. If someone said, "Hey, you should check out this Miles Davis album," you hoped that they were going to lend that to you because you couldn't just go and Google it or something like that. So I remember not understanding things like Miles Davis, like why he was so cool, because when I went to my local record store and the Miles Davis section, and the only record that was there was Bitches Brew. And if you don't know, that's a very advanced Miles Davis album that was far beyond my where I was at musically at the time. Yeah,
Well, this is perfect. Maybe we can even just dive in and continue this conversation, and we hear maybe the first piece of music, which might kind of give us a great starting off point or jumping off point for
totally.
the next era. Tell me about it.
Well, it's a funny one. I'm looking ahead here at the Battle of New Orleans, the Johnny Horton thing. So I don't I think this was not a garage sale one. I think this was from my mom's collection. But I remember we had the record player, and it had one of those little L things that would hold the 45s and drop them, and you could stack as many 45s as you could get on the little pin. And so we would do that. But then if you left the L thing open, it would play the record over and over and over and over again. So I remember being probably about 7 years old and loving Johnny Horton's The Battle of New Orleans and just playing it over and over and over to the point that my parents, I think they asked me to stop at one point. But anyways, here's a little bit of that.
In 1814, we took a little trip along with Colonel Jackson down the mighty Mississippi. We took a little bacon and we took a little beans, and we caught the bloody British in a town in New Orleans. We fired our guns and the British kept a-coming. There wasn't as many as there was a while ago. We fired once more and they began to run it on down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. We looked down the river and we see the British come, and there must have been 100 of them.
As much as we really need to get the sense of that one, but I think I can still, in certain conditions, belt that out. I haven't called that at a gig at Pags yet, but maybe that'll come around. But I love listening back to that too, because that was definitely burned in my mind. And if my mom's listening, sorry, mom, about that. But because it was played a lot, as a 7-year-old. And again, with the garage sale things, we had like the Goofy Greats or there was all those novelty songs like the Purple People Eaters, and a lot of them socially inappropriate, right, in our modern context, maybe even that last one. But yeah, fascinating. But then hearing them now as an adult or and a like amateur producer recording, I'm like, wow, check out the slapback delay on the vocals and that just the burn in his vocal tone, and just these tiny
Yeah.
little things that are really, I wouldn't call that the most groovy. It's a marching beat, but cool. It has
Oh
a lot
yeah,
of
it had time. It
personality.
had
Yeah.
sass. It's
Yeah, exactly.
something that grabbed the young Brooke.
Yes. Well, and I love that too, because right now where I'm at, I'm realizing, and we'll get there hopefully by the end of this interview, but realizing the importance of New Orleans and New Orleans based music to me. Even when I didn't realize it was important to me, I went through phases of where I was trying to be a jazz guy as I hit high school, and that was sort of a big thing for me to try. And there was a strong music program in my school, and playing saxophone, and it was the cool thing to do, and I really enjoyed it, but it wasn't where I was coming from. I'd listened to a lot of like Beatles and other sort of music prior to that, so it took me a while to understand how it all fit together, like all the different genres. Anyways, maybe rewind a little bit there, but that Battle of New Orleans, that was a record I was allowed to play and did play. and definitely got the word New Orleans in my head. So that was pretty cool. Um, yeah, maybe I'll play another one too because I feel like the couple of those songs I've got on that list, the first couple songs, just play the clips of them. That the first Shaboom there coming up. This was another record. We had an R&B hits record, and I remember it because the songs that were on it sounded differently than the ones that I heard on the radio that had the same name. So the next one I was hoping to play was by the Chords, which is the original version of this song called Shaboom, which check it out. I mean, it's pretty obvious now with the video, but it's
life could be a dream. Life could be a dream. Do, 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 shaboom. Life could be a dream. If I could take you up in paradise up above. Shaboom. If you would tell me I'm the only one that you love. Life could be a dream. Sweetheart, hello, hello again. Shaboom, and open we'll meet again. Boom. Ding dong, ding dong, a lang, a lang, a lang. Oh, whoa, whoa, bip. A bip, a bip, a whoa. Life could be a dream. If only all my precious plans would come true. If you would let me spend my whole life loving you, life could be a dream, sweetheart. Every time I look at you, something is on my mind. If you do what I want you to, baby, we'd be so fine. Oh, life could be a dream. Shaboom, if I could take you up in paradise up above. Shaboom, and tell me, darling, I'm the only one that you love. Life could be a dream. Sweetheart, hello, hello again. Shaboom, and hope we'll meet again. Boom,
DJ C, DJ Christine there on the YouTube. Thank you. Yeah, amazing. Amazing swing, amazing groove, amazing harmonies. But growing up in Parksville, I didn't know what it was that made that so special. It took me a little while to kind of decode that it was sounds you didn't hear around here as much. And then, yeah, the next one, actually, Christine, if you do have that handy, the Crew Cuts version of it, just the contrast, it kind of blew my mind. I remember not understanding. It's like, oh, I love that Shaboom song, and then hearing this version and going like, that's not quite the version that I love. I'm not sure if that's an easy one to play next. There we go.
Oh, life could be a dream if I could take you up in paradise up above. If you would tell me I'm the only one that you love. Life could be a dream, sweetheart. Hello, hello again. Shaboom, and hope we'll meet again. Oh, life could be a dream if only all my precious plans would come true. If you would let me spend my whole life loving you. Life could be a dream, sweetheart. Now,
but it's still amazing, right? Still amazing music, but just a different resonance to it that I didn't know what it was, but something just didn't quite feel the same for me. So I learned obviously later a bit more about the history of the music and commercial music and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
And so for you, having the chance to dive into this music when it was just in your ears, had you in that day dreams or aspirations to be a professional musician? Was that something that you were like, oh, I want, maybe professional is not the word, but were you like, I want to create that energy that you heard maybe in the original Shaboom sound? Did you want to do that on the stage at that point?
Yes, and actually that I missed that out in some of the notes I sent you because that's a great point. I had a really good friend in grade 3 and grade 4, Brent Gall, and we hung out all the time. We were skimboarding and we were like riding our BMX bikes around, and we had rock and roll hits, and Elvis was the coolest. And I think we saw a video, you know, it's hard to see a video. You couldn't just go and Google it again. So we saw a video of Elvis or one of those movies, and he was cool. And there was girls, and we were too young to really be into girls, but we knew it was cool to be into girls. So Elvis was cool. And I have a memory of air banding, lip syncing the Big Boppers, Chantilly Lace with Brent with our hairbrush sort of thing. And that's about so yeah, so that was like, oh, this is a cool thing. And I think about that age, I started to do like I was taking piano lessons, so I'd do like the school concert at lunchtime. The teacher would we'd all go into the room with the piano, and Chad would play, and I would play, and a couple other folks like that. So not
And the
necessarily aspirations of
equipment.
rock stardom or anything, but definitely a sort of an understanding of like maybe that's my tribe, or maybe that's a place where I can belong or connect with. Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
And are we at the now I know that high school for you was pivotal maybe in a few ways, not only for some of the people that you met who would be inspirational from the teacher perspective, but also some other musicians that you met who would also become part of your people who you would have lifelong musical relationships with. Are we at that point already in your development?
Um, um, almost. Just, I mean, I went to school with Chad Geeky, who's a fantastic piano player, as well as another great Victoria musician, Damian Graham. And we were all the same vintage, and we started to hang out. We knew each other in elementary school, but we really started to hang out about grade 6 and 7, a bit more. We had band together in middle school, and then we started kind of more playing together in grade 9. We had a jazz combo.
Now,
But
if we were like a fancy TVO show at this point, we'd bring up that photo
oh
that I've
yeah,
seen of
yes,
you with a quartet at like Band Fest Canada
yeah,
or
Music Fest
something.
Canada in
Yeah.
the 80s, yeah, magical times. But I mean, how lucky is that, right? Like
It's
in our
beautiful.
quartet, there was another fellow, Gerald Ingborg, and he was a great guy, but he wasn't as interested in the music or as connected with as we were. But out of that quartet, 3 out of the 4 of us are gigging professionally as musicians, which is pretty lovely from a small town, Parksville. We were really
And that
lucky to have
that
found
maybe
each other.
speaks a lot. So did you two, did you three connect? Was it, I'm sorry, I've drawn a blank on the name. Was it Bill K?
We connected in middle school, and
Okay.
actually, what happened? Okay, get ready for that, Christine. Jumping ahead to "You Belong to the City." So in grade 7, no, grade 8, I think we had a new band teacher come to our school, and it was almost like one of those after school special movies, like the cool band teacher comes in, and this was 80 something, but DX7s, Yamaha DX7 synthesizers had just come out, and she had one, and she played the saxophone, and she had blonde tips
Oh
in
yeah,
her
forget about it.
hair. She was cool. We weren't sure. Maybe she was a lesbian in a small town. It was pretty incredible, but she had an air of mystery, and she was super awesome. Her name is Patty Cooper, and that she gave me the keys to the city, basically. So one of the things she did as the new teacher in the school was, hey, we've got our band program, but we're gonna do a music video because music videos are coming out. So we're gonna do a live action music video, and we're gonna do Glenn Fry's "You Belong to the City," and we're gonna play it live. And yeah, so we did that. So there was a saxophone part, which it's kind of like a saxophone riff, and it was auditioned. So it was the first time. This is I auditioned grade 8, and this saxophone riff. We don't have to play too much of it, but you'll get it right off. But it's a very special time. Okay, we can play on that. So
So that was your gateway. That was
that
your
was
first audition.
totally gateway. Totally gateway.
And so did you prepare that? Like was that
Oh
part
man,
of
I
how you
practiced that. That was the first. I think that was actually the first time I realized transcribing, like everything is on the records. Just try and
right?
copy the records as much as you can. So I probably taped that. Probably bought the 45 at Grennan's Records in Parksville and taped it, and then listened to it over and over and just practice. It's still E E E D sharp B, yeah, in whatever key.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still know that muscle memory of playing that. Yeah, so I did that a lot, and I got the gig, and then we toured that to a couple different schools, and this was at the end of my grade 8 school year, and we toured it to Qualicum Secondary or Qualicum Middle School, and Bill Cave from Qualicum happened to be
Okay.
there, and there had been some talk about me potentially going to that school, and so he came up and he was super friendly, and so the next year I got to go to Qualicum School, where music was a big priority, and yeah, he was a fantastic teacher and inspiration and mentor for there was already a bunch of great musicians there, and some great musicians had come out way prior to me that he had also taught and mentored, including the amazing legendary Phil Dwyer, Pat Collins, and Richard Cave, Bill's own son, as well as great musicians like Mike Norman and Chris Aiken and Reiner Wilkie and Brian Kehoe and Colin Perry. Like there's a whole crowd of
Wow,
them who
this
are
is a
all
list.
they're working musicians on the island, hyper talents and all hyper inspired.
Yeah.
And those were just, I think, just the main ones that I can really remember. But almost anybody who was in that program still is very actively involved as a fan of music or singing choirs, or it was just a really life-changing experience.
So tell me, do you think was that did Bill Cave bring some kind of inspiration that was infectious, or did you all already have the bug and he was able to nurture it?
Well,
A little
I
bit of,
think he nurtured a culture, and I think even flashing back to Damien and Chad, why I am so appreciative of having those social friends, because I really think music is a social activity, and so I don't know if I would
amen.
have been a musician if I had grown up the lone tree in the forest or whatever. I don't know if I was that strong of a seed, but because it was cool and it was our thing, I connected with it. So in the Qualicum secondary music program in the 80s, there was a vocal jazz program and a jazz band program and a concert choir and a concert band, and then small combos, like a whole bunch of small combos. And this is a school of like only 500 people. Like my grad class was 100 people, but this was a national, winning some awards. And Bill Cave was a funny thing. He was a real phenomenon because he wasn't a product of an education pedagogy jazz system. He was a metalwork teacher who could play the trumpet and loved music, and it oozed through him. So he didn't have a lot of training in theory, even conducting, really, but he had enthusiasm and a love, and he had his own band called the Cavemen with like Brian Stovall and Steve Jones. Brian Stovall's like one of the major music teachers on the island. Steve Jones was the head of Malaspina Jazz program. So it was a smaller population in the area, but we were so lucky to be around those great older musicians who were good, but they weren't, it wasn't like Phil Dwyer was everywhere. They were just good working musicians, but they had this enthusiasm and the time and patience and love to share it with everybody. And then consequently, it was really contagious. So there was this whole culture at Qualicum where the rugby team was cool, but this choir was cool, and there were folks that were on the rugby team and in the choir, and it was of just the whole embraced by the school culture. And I got a
Beautiful. Hey.
girlfriend, and like she was in the band, and her brother was the best musician in the school, and there was this all kind of, it was that formative time where, oh, music, suddenly I'm cooler than I was in my other school where it was mostly athletic based, and I'm sort of that's not my forte. So yeah, so it was awesome. It totally changed my game. And it's funny, I hear people talk about high school and as like, oh my God, high school. But for me, I feel so fortunate because it was like such an ideal situation that almost coming out of it was more of a challenge because we had such an insulated, wonderful dream world of music there. And again, Chad and Damien, that's really a strong part of it. I know those
One
guys.
one thing that I wonder, and that maybe this is connected, is that there are people in our community who know you as a sax player,
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
great swing and tenor player, and then there are people who know you as a great like jazz piano player, and then there are people who know you as like a uh, like playing a lot of like sock hops and 50s rockabilly, and then there's people who know you as a singer, and then there's people who know you as a choir director, and then writing musicals. So all these different communities, it sounds to me like even in high school, not only did you have this kind of eclectic musical appreciation, but also maybe you had a situation that fostered, because, so far I've heard about you playing saxophone, but you were also playing piano, and were you also singing in a choir? Is that part of your
Yeah,
vocal world foundation as well?
Again, it was funny because this Bill Cave, the band teacher, he happened to live in Parksville. I lived in Parksville, and to get to Qualicum, he lived up the road. So I got a ride to school with him every morning from grade 9 to grade 12. And so part of that was he sort of controlled my fate. So when he said, "You're going to join the choir," and I said, "Nah," he said, "Yeah, you are, because that's how you're getting home. That's how you're getting to school, as well as you're going to join the choir." So he forced me to sing. I'd never sung before that, and it was just normal. It's like jumping in the pool, just jump in the pool. And that's what was so beautiful about that environment. It's because he wasn't just a jazz focus or a rock focus. He was just like, music is music. And he really played to connect with people. So he would play "You've Lost That Lovin' Feeling," and then he would play "Just a Gigolo," and then he would play a 12-bar blues, and then we'd do some bassy, and like there was a Neil Diamond song, like no rules. Entertain the people, sing. Vocal jazz, the repertoire for vocal jazz is amongst musicians often sort of laughed at a little bit, but there was none of that. It was just like, hey, it's all cool. Just sing it and do it, play it. Don't think about it too much. It wasn't an overly intellectual experience, but I'm just getting a note to turn up my volume here. Hopefully that's not too loud. We'll see what happens.
That sounds great.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah. So super lucky to have that culture. So singing, yeah, why not do it? Write arrangements, why not? He was doing it. Mike Norman was a couple years older than me, and he's since passed away. That's a real loss to the BC music scene, but he was writing songs as soon as I was in there. So and it was a strange time because we didn't know what jazz was. We small town guys. Damien's dad is I forget his first name, but he's a great vibes player down here. And he was a jazz lover. Like he played with Joey Smith and Don Lepard down in Victoria. So that his dad was our in. And so Damien would get CDs from him or know what the hip CDs were and then sort of make tapes. That was a huge deal. So he'd make tapes, and that was our introduction to jazz, but we didn't know the rules really because we were sort of jamming on Taking Care of Business, BTO, or 12-bar blues, or the Shuffle Demons were awesome. We loved the Shuffle Demons, and they were doing sort of hip hop street rap, and we put that stuff in. We played Led Zeppelin songs in our jazz combo. So the rules were pretty loose. Just play music and have a good time and connect. And that was definitely Bill Cave.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, now most of the time when we do this, we invite our guests to bring on maybe 10 songs, and just to do a little aside to the audience is that Brooke presented us with, I think it was 40 pieces. So, and all over the map and super great. So just so that we do get a chance to dive in, can I ask you where you might like to go next based on what you were saying about this eclectic world you have? It could be I'd be really interested. It could be, because we haven't really talked about you as a piano player or as a singer yet. Was there somebody who was influential to you at this moment, or is it saxophone still predominant?
Well, I think what I did looking at my list, one thing I really missed over. So Elvis was an influence. We don't need to play any Elvis, but the track that's on there is really interesting because it's really swinging, and it's got a horn section, and it's kind of, is it New Orleans Dixie rock? What's going on there? Maybe we should play that. Just a clip of that.
Yeah,
and then I'd love to play Beatles, because for me the Beatles also is just a huge thing to not have said. Is silly. So that's called Hard-Headed Woman. I'm not sure if you got that, Christine. DJC.
Now, just while Christine's bringing this up, I find it so beautiful that so much of the music that you've talked about too is music that still, I hear it inspire you, and I hear you still call tunes from all these different artists. It's like these are the things that we fall in love with early.
Definitely.
Let's check this out. I've never heard this.
It's a little sexy.
Well, a hard-headed woman, a soft-hearted man, been the cause of trouble ever since the world began. Oh yeah, ever since the world began. A hard-headed woman, well, it's on in the slide on man. Adam told Eve, listen here to me. Don't you let me catch you messing around that apple tree. Oh yeah, ever since the world began. A hard-headed woman, well, it's on in the slide on man. Oh yeah, ever since the world
Fire.
Loaded with
Played that Christine. But it's got so many things. Like just hearing it again, his voice is incredible. We know that. There's the badass guitar, all those chromaticisms. There's background vocals with these beautiful pads. This band's swinging like it's like a mini big band, but it's in the rock and roll category. So this kind of helped me understand my existential crisis as I got into jazz world, because I didn't understand how that music had anything to do with, again, Miles Davis or Sonny Rollins or some of the saxophone based things I'd come up with later. And that's where I'm thankful I made it through that, because I feel like where I am now, it's like, oh, that totally makes sense. It's all of the same roots, right? Anyway, so we can talk about that later, but that's that Elvis fire that always gets me. Is it easy to play When I'm 64? That's the next one. And I remember, I think I stayed up late and wasn't supposed to watch this, but I just heard the beginning of The World According to Garp. And so here's the opening credits for, and I remember hearing this song and loving it and not knowing what it was. But even now, I kind of feel like I can see the connections. Like,
of course,
where are all the woodwinds in today's contemporary music? Like, there's clarinets in the Beatles song, there's trombones and stuff in the Elvis song. Like, oh gosh, let's get the wind instruments back.
Yeah, it is true. You mentioned this early on. You said, does it fit in the record category? So there's a sound concept and ideas, musical sensibilities that exist genre free.
Yeah.
That blur, and there's spirit. It's funny how we get these ideas, and I'm glad you had a world that embraced them all growing up.
Yeah, well, and embrace them, or it gave me the opportunity to explore them a little bit more, but didn't necessarily explain them to me. So it was still kind of mysterious why you weren't allowed to play When I'm 64 at the jazz festival. Or,
right.
There were some rules, but I didn't quite get them yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I get them yet either. But anyways, yeah. And then so again, I was so fortunate. We just spent half an hour talking about my up to grade 8. I'm so sorry. But then I really switched gears, and then I had some saxophone lessons and was introduced to a lot of fantastic John Coltrane and Sonny Rollins and Dexter Gordon. I played an alto saxophone, so I always wished I could play the cool tenor. But yeah, that was one of the CDs we had. Damien had Michael Brecker, and just hearing some of that was incredible. He had Harry Connick Jr., introduced me to Harry Connick Jr., and that for me was a huge one. And again, as a jazz guy, we weren't sure if we were supposed to like Harry Connick. Like, didn't know enough, but we, at that time in the 90s, it was jazz was very sort of like the Young Lion movement, and very sort of post neo bop, I think, was kind of the hip thing. And so Harry Connick was so commercial and so successful. If you don't know Harry Connick, great piano player and singer out of New Orleans, who happens to be like a matinee idol and just hyper talented. So that movie Harry Met Sally came out, and this is from that. This is It Had to Be You.
To be you, it had to be you. I wandered around and finally found the somebody who could make me be true.
Awesome, we can fade it.
Could make me be blue, or even be glad.
So good. Like, he's so good.
Yeah, it sounds so easy, hey?
And it sounds so easy, but he's so good looking, and it's so produced that your hackles kind of go up. You're like, is it that good, or is it just been manufactured to be that good? But then you realize he is that good. Harry Connick is that good or better. Like, it's incredible. But it's such a beautiful thing to have that level of production with somebody of that level of talent as well, as opposed to sort of the production holding up the talent. But
yeah, totally true.
But yeah, so superhero again from New Orleans, surprise, surprise, and playing this commercial music that also has such a deep groove and swing in it. That's like, I just love that. And again, handsome, and the ladies liked it, and it was connecting with people. And yeah, there was so many things about his music that really got me. Yeah, all of us, I think.
Yeah,
Eventually,
and so much so.
yeah.
Now, just before we leave the tenor, I just want to share a personal reflection. Is that you and I think, first met in the University of Victoria big band,
Yeah, that's right.
led by Ian McDougall. And
Yeah.
I remember I was playing drums, and I think the first rehearsal you were wearing like maybe a pork pie hat. Is
Oh,
that possible?
I don't know.
Like Lester Young, and you came in, I think you had a red tenor case, and you weren't
Okay.
even in the music program. I don't even know what you were doing. Maybe you were doing Ed or something, but you swung and you had this huge, warm, fuzzy, beautiful sound like Sonny Rollins or Dexter in my mind, and this beautiful ability to play time in your phrases, and a very dance-like kind of sound. I mean, like it swung. Your
Yeah.
playing
Yeah.
made me want to dance, and that was such a beautiful thing. And I'm not sure, we haven't touched on your English degrees or travels to Montreal yet or anything like that. But just before we leave those tenor players, is there anything that you can tell me about how you got that sound? What inspired you to find your sound on tenor?
Oh man, I don't know. I still feel like I'm looking for it, but I really liked Dexter Gordon, um, Dexter Gordon and Sonny Rollins, and I was at CYMC. I think Damien and I got to go to CYMC Courtney Youth Music Center camp,
Camp.
somewhere up there, and met the Dan Craven up there, and he was a couple years older. Dan Craven, a great educator up in Qualicum, who's also an incredible tenor player. So he was everyone's idol. Seamus Blake had just been through there a previous year, and so Dan was sort of the keeper of the flame, and he introduced me to a great album called Coltrane's Ballads, as well as Dexter Gordon Go and Our Man in Paris. I think those are the big three albums. We've got a recording called Say It Over and Over Again by John Coltrane.
Yeah, let's hear just a little bit of that.
That would be amazing. And then Second Balcony Junk by Dexter Gordon would be amazing to have backed up too. Yeah, that was just so cool. And discovering all those things by yourself, right? Because it's like, it wasn't my parents saying, hey, you should check this out. It was like Damien's like, check this out, or Dan's like, wow, this is awesome, and then hanging out and listening to it. And yeah, it was awesome. But it's just sort of spoke so romantically, and I think it was a girlfriend thing. It was a slow dancing kind of, like, it just sort of put you in a romantic state. And I think further that at that age is a movie came out, I think in 87, called Round Midnight. And maybe if you had Body and Soul up next, the soundtrack for Round Midnight, we listened to that a lot. That was really inspirational. And again, it was had so much emotion to it. And it started a love for me of jazz and as emotive storytelling, as well as Europe and Paris and post-war France and all that sort of magical stuff. So this is Dexter Gordon playing a version of himself, an expatriate saxophone player in France. And this is a Coltrane version of Body and Soul. Dexter's playing. but it's not like the most beautiful tone. It's not the Celine Dion of the saxophone. It's just has
Oh.
so much personality to it, eh?
Well, what I've been starting to hear even from your first couple examples, all the beauty that lies in the cracks.
Yeah,
You know,
imperfections.
the the time, the tone, I think of like the Billie Holidays or,
Mm.
Questlove or even the first version of Shaboom, there's and you've alluded to it too, and the idea of like sometimes where you can polish things out and miss the soul, and yet sometimes when there's those nuggets of soul, they're not for a lack of musical rigor or being able to put things on a grid, but they're this ability to know that music doesn't exist on a grid, and somehow that which is transcendent between the notes can connect, like
Yeah.
those sound.
It's funny because I think a lot of sax players fall into that or have fallen into that at one time or another. And I'm just trying to get out of it because listening to Dexter or any of those masters who are
Mm.
laying back and playing with the beat, if you don't really know where the beat is in the first place, it can be a little bit dangerous. So I think I went through my 20s and 30s doing that a little bit. And I think I'm working on, because I think you have to know where it is to know where it ain't, right? To have that
Mm.
level of control, as opposed to just being,
Yeah.
I'm going to be a lazy guy. But sometimes
No.
the lazy guy, alcoholic sax player has a certain personality that speaks maybe more than the perfection in a certain way. I don't know. Yeah, I'm still working to play on the grid, so I can play off the grid. But it's funny, as I switch to playing piano, you realize the grid is a real thing, and it's called a rhythm section. And as a horn player, and if you've only
Mm.
been a horn player, you have not been part of the rhythm section, probably. That was my experience, anyways. I didn't realize what was going on to make that machine move, right? Like the drums and the bass and the
Yeah.
guitar, and just, yeah, keeping that time really locked. So
You have a
I heard a lot of people really didn't like Dexter Gordon for that too, because he would just be so leaning heavily on the rhythm section.
yeah.
Had some lessons with Art Ellison, great tenor sax player based out of Courtney for a while, and he was saying that about Dexter Gordon. This Dexter sounds like he's being lazy and needs to get his stuff together.
Yeah, interesting indeed.
Yeah. So I'm not
Wow.
sure. I like the way that sounds. I'm
Oh man.
not
Yeah, it's
always in control
rich
of
and
it. Yeah.
broad and
Yeah.
beautiful. Hey, you got a little our co-bandmate Peter Dowse fires you a question, which is also a statement, which is also, I think, a pope worthy of retaliation. He says, "You really heard the Beatles in a movie?" Question mark, question mark.
I think I really heard them for the first time with that. We had the Apple records with the apples on them, and I did like them, but I didn't really get into them. I was too young.
Yeah.
So it was about grade 7, whenever that was. And I think that's a pretty formative year. I talked to a lot of people around between grade 7 and grade 10 is a really formative years where you get exposed to. It's still with me. Anyways, yeah. Take that.
Yeah. First
That's how
loves.
hip. That's how hip I'm not, Peter Dose.
Well, he is a little bit older than us. Oh, sorry. Peter. Okay, let's check it out. So we got to touch on the sound of your horn, and I really appreciate that because, you know, you are just a swinging, soulful tenor player too. Okay, so we touched on Coltrane, which I'm just delighted because I love that, and Dexter. And now, where do you want to go to here? It's a it's a buffet. I'm looking at this list in
Yeah,
front of me.
I don't know. I mean, if we're going through my life chronologically, blah blah blah. I got to go to Berklee College of Music, so that was a huge mark for me.
Now, was
Uh,
that right out of high school?
I'd spent 1 year at Malaspina College
Okay.
with Chad, and then he went out to McGill to study music, and I went out to Boston I had some scholarships so I could go down there and studied jazz composition and arranging because I had been immersed in jazz world, and I thought that's what I really wanted to do. Sort of trying to poo-poo all my Beatles and all the pop and that Elvis and that shaboom shaboom stuff, and trying to just listen to get your vocabulary up for the jazz world. But Berklee was such an amazing school for that because it sort of continued the idea that there are no barriers or John referee or whatever. Going through those practice rooms was mind blowing in terms of you'd hear somebody practicing Irish flute jigs, and in the next room somebody playing like heavy metal guitar, and then in the next room a saxophone player playing rock and roll saxophone high notes, and in the next room a jazz trumpet player, in the next room a guitar player doing like Django. So it's like just totally eclectic at such a high level. So realizing that's the bucket world digging into, and what kind of I love or feel fortunate about picking the jazz road for a bit is all the pedagogy was jazz. So you can major in death metal guitar if you want to at Berkeley, but you're going to take all the jazz theory classes, because that was sort of when I started to really connect with the idea how theory actually works, not just as a test that the Royal Conservatoire is going to give me, and my piano teacher is going to spank my hand if I fail. No, it wasn't that bad. But yeah, Berkeley really, really eye-opening like that.
So we've got, I'm super interested now. I hadn't actually realized that you dug into the composition world at Berkeley. I was imagining that you were just there as a tenor player. So that opens up a whole raft of questions that I have for you. Because I first heard some of your music, man, I'm not sure. Maybe it was the album that you did when you were back here. Now, I know this is jumping ahead, but I wonder if you would indulge us. Could we hear one of the pieces that you did from your album Live, aka Live in the Basement?
Live in the Basement. Yeah, sure.
Would that be okay?
Yeah, great.
Because I remember, you were very inspiring to me because you were writing these tunes. And at the time, you would just as comfortably write something that sort of sounded, felt like a standard as much as you would be, playing some Police tunes or whatnot. So what would be the best one? Was if you ever want someone to fall in love with you?
If you ever need somebody to fall in love with you, probably. That's the very end of the list there, Christine.
And maybe you could contextualize us the opening vocal cameo. I think it's a Joan.
Oh, that's right. So yeah, I made a CD in 2005 called Live in the Basement, or Live in the Basement, which I recorded live in the basement while I was living in the basement. And our friend at the time, Joan Mans, one of the icons of the Victoria cultural scene, was she'd come up to my gigs all the time. And so this is right around the time I was recording this. So I asked her if she wouldn't mind giving some vocal intros on all my songs. So she did a little ramble of the song titles. I just recorded it and stuck it in there. So yeah, so that's Joan off the top.
Awesome.
If you ever need somebody to fall in love with you, there's always me. I got it rhyme with somebody.
Some time ago you entered my life like a vision, and since then your friendship has brightened up many a day. Boy, time has gone on, I can feel how the temperature's risen. Oh, we both know it's changed, so it's time now for someone to say, if you ever need somebody to fall in love with you, oh, I'd like to give it a try. I think that I might be the guy. Or if you ever need somebody to fall, head over here's for you. I'd like to have a go. Come on, baby, let me know. Well, every time that we're together, I wear a smile so white I can't hide my bliss. I just die of fever. You were to stop being shy, pop me a kiss. If you ever need somebody to fall, head over here's for you. Oh, don't go searching very far away, 'cause I'll be waiting here forever and a day. You just say the word, you give me the cue, and all my love belongs to you. can't hide my bliss. And I'd just die if ever you were to stop being shy and pop me a kiss. If you ever need somebody to fall, it over here's for you. Don't search far away, 'cause I'll be waiting here forever and the day you just said the word. Give me the cue and all my love belongs to you. All my love belongs to you. All my love belongs to you.
Shouldn't play that too close back to back with a Harry Connick tune, though. Note for next time.
Hey, I don't know. What's that say? Imitation is the most sincere form of compliment. But I mean, man, it's swinging. So I'm excited to hear. Also, I think we're gonna get graced with a tune live, maybe a little later on in the program. But that actually, can you believe it? That was you said that was from 2005.
Yeah.
15 years ago, if my math
I know.
serves.
I know.
It's amazing, hey? How time flies.
How time flies.
But speaking of all the values that you're talking about, trying to write music that connects with people, that is both familiar but also rooty and roots, has roots in time and feel and form and telling a story.
Stealing from the best.
Amen. That's the way to do it. Hey, so it's a perfect juncture for me to say welcome to anyone who's just tuning in. We're coming close to the top of the hour. My name is Kelby McNair, and this is Tuesday Night Jazz. And my very special guest this evening, from all the way across the bridge in Vic West, or is it a Esquimalt technically?
It's Esquimalt officially.
Okay, Esquimalt. My alma mater territory, high school wise, is the wonderful, talented, super great Brooke Maxwell. Choir director, singer, composer, tenor player, choreographer, community event leader. Man, we got to talk about the neighborhood hootenanny time machine. So many things that you do. So thank you so much for tuning in. And if you're interested to support the work of Tuesday Night Jazz at the church, what we've been doing in the time of COVID-19 is as a chance for us to get together and celebrate music and coming together. I get to sit down once a week with a special guest musician, someone who so far now has been many of the artists who have been guests and an integral part of Tuesday Night Jazz at the church at James Bay United Church when we've been live there with all of you. But now we also have the chance to start moving further afield and connecting with some of the wonderful artists, and it gives us a chance to not only hear some of their own music, but some of the music that has inspired them, which provides a wonderful opportunity to hear some of the pieces to their puzzle, musically speaking. And again, tonight, my very special guest is Brooke Maxwell. And if you'd like to support this, I think that Christine Chapea is able to post a little link. And what that money does is that simply enables us to keep this going. There's some modest costs associated with this kind of a program, and we genuinely appreciate your support, not only listening and checking it out. Tell your friends, but also if you feel like you're able to support it monetarily wise, that's absolutely wonderful as well. With no further ado, we have but 36 more songs to hear of Brooke on his playlist so far. Now, what I was talking to Brooke, because we have you had such an eclectic list and such an inspired list, you kind of like the idea of just seeing where the conversation and the spirit takes you. So where would you like to go next?
Well, I don't think it's ever a bad thing to go back to Tom Waits. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the music of Tom Waits and his artistry. I'm just learning more and more about it. But we started a group a little while ago called the Beautiful Maladies, which pays tribute to his music. Great composer, great character performer, and he brings a real sort of theatrical aspect to what he does. So when I first heard him, I didn't know what that was. I thought it was a joke, but I was living in South Korea at the time, and my cousin had made me a cassette tape, sent it over, and I just laughed. So I just didn't know if it was the same guy doing all the crazy voices, but he's a little darker or heavier than I ever really sincerely would go, but I just absolutely loved the fact that he would be playing these characters with such commitment, and the music would support his character. So he's writing the music as well as singing the songs. Yeah. Anyways, this is called Blow Wind Blow.
Take me on into the night, blow me away, blow me away. There is on the blacktop, there's a husband in the doghouse, and a man.
You get the sense of it, and it's sort of flash. It reminds me in some ways of that Dexter Gordon Round Midnight, in terms of there's something broken down about it and imperfect, but also very human at the same time, that still has the elements of the enough groove and enough swing. I don't know, for some reason I feel it's connected, but seeing that and hearing that means everything is okay. Do you know what I mean? Like it just was, I find for me that was really inspiring to go like, oh man, this guy is kind of crazy and kind of a genius. And that's only one of his characters that he sings under. So I started thinking a little bit more in terms of persona based singing.
Okay.
I was into jazz for a little while, and I sort of got out of it as I realized that there was other things I really liked. And I found the Fringe festivals in Victoria, probably about 2002. And that was the first time I'd ever seen Fringe. And just seeing different people expressing themselves in really interesting ways. And there's some, okay, I don't need to see that again, but there's some very creative, inspiring things that I got to see. And so that was my favorite festival. I would see like 25 shows if I could. And that's where I met Joan. She was working at those shows. But just alternate forms of expression. And I'm a social person, and this version of me, I'm pretty comfortable to talk to most people, but I'm not a real, I don't think of myself as a real showman. I kind of get a little bit shy, but I like the idea of singing behind a mask or a persona. And around the time with those Fringe festivals, I met the group, local theater group called Atomic Vaudeville. And so I started connecting with them and writing little songs for them. That I wouldn't have to be on stage for. I would just write the songs, the lyrics, and the background tracks, and they would sing them. So that became a really great creative outlet that sort of, for me, harkens back to the Tom Waits theatricality, or, David Bowie's in there somewhere too, but I would say Tom Waits is deeper for me. Yeah, so that was happening around the same time as I did that Harry Connick album. I was starting to write those Atomic Vaudeville songs just after that.
And so, of course, for folks who maybe don't know, well, actually, I don't want to give it away. So you started writing music that kind of existed, maybe like in a more of like a cabaret kind of, the option to bring in theatrical elements into the storytelling, the development of characters.
Yeah, and the idea of putting on a different character. So like I remember the first time I'd written for them, they said, "Hey, okay, great. We're going to do our theme this week is we're going to do a beauty pageant, and we need you to write a song for the stereotypical beauty that's going to win, her sidekick, and the evil other contestant." So I had to write these 3 songs in these 3 characters, and they sort of gave me a little bit of a list of a rundown on it. Should be kind of like this. And there's some very clever people involved with Atomic Vaudeville. So it was really inspiring to sort of, okay, now I'm going to be the mean girl. Now I'm going to be this character or whatever. So super fun.
Yeah, and what a wonderful opportunity I hear for you in terms of like uh, a blank, like a canvas that you can
100%.
play, you can
100%.
explore.
Yeah. And actually I should back that up too, because it's one thing to play instruments, but I also I don't play I don't think I play too many instruments. I don't play instruments that well. I like people who specialize, I think I have the utmost respect, because I know how much work it takes to be that good on an instrument. So that's why I'm not a jazz player. And I think I'm a decent piano player, and I can entertain a room. There's certain things I can do, but I also, one of the other areas I've eclectically spent a lot of time on is home studio recording, which allows for multi-tracking and learning about synthesizers and different textures. And I remember hearing techno music or Portishead or some different things like that, or Bjork, or going like, how do they do that? So I went down that road a little bit. We don't have to spend too much time on that, but that helped me sort of understand the full, more palette, more texture, more
Mm.
musical palette to sort of fill things in with that supported my eclectic musical taste. So it's not just bass drums and piano. I really enjoy, but I also really, I know I'm learning about the power of a synth pad and all those sort of other little effects, ambient sounds, and yeah.
Yeah, and in the various incarnations that I got to hear of your work for Ride the Cyclone,
Mhm.
I know your ideas of different percussion textures and setting up different rhythmic cycles that of unusual sounds,
Mm-hmm.
found sounds, where you could kind of create similarly, I suppose that Tom Waits was able to create that sonic landscape for us as we moved into that room.
Yeah, for
There's
sure.
this energy to the sound quality that I've often found that you like to explore. Now, you also do sound design and also other composing work for theater
Mhm.
as well. Do you think that cross pollinates into your jazz playing or your own writing for its own sake, or do you find right now you're mostly writing when it comes to a character?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I hope I can answer that better in the next couple months because I feel like the last album I recorded was 2005, and with this quarantine, I'm feeling very fortunate. Both my wife and I are healthy, and all our family's good, but it's been a real sort of time of cocooning and spending a bit of time in music land
Mm.
again, just recently. So I'm hoping to get something together. I'm curious what form it will take because since I did that last one with voice, piano, and yeah, voice and piano, a little bit of saxophone. Now I've learned a lot more home studio stuff, and I hope I don't over decorate the cake, whatever that is. Um, yeah, but I'm curious because I find my ears need a little bit more challenge, or I like to add a bit more texture and some music. So I love it when we get a chance to play as a trio live. It's fantastic, but I feel like I'm also interested in supplementing some of those sounds and how do you
Hmm.
capture the live feel, but then decorate it so it doesn't look like it's decorated. And again, that's Tom Waits, I think, is the master of artifice, natural
Ah,
artifice. Yeah,
beautiful. Well
yeah,
put.
yeah.
And so the Beautiful Maladies are a working band that was playing bigger and bigger rooms, selling out, doing really well. And that's a kind of a cooperative band between you and some pretty influential players in the local scene.
Yeah, great players.
And that's from you, Kelly Fawcett, Aaron Watson,
Yep,
Matt Pease, Peter Dowse kind
Peter
of a
Dowd. Yep, that's the
lineup.
full. Yeah,
Pretty
yeah.
powerhouse
Great
band.
players, great
Yeah.
guys, and yeah, and amazing music. So we're
Beautiful. Okay,
yeah.
well, so far in this journey, we've been around the world a little bit. Now, there is I see, I'm curious. Um, in a lot of your playing, so the band that I've been fortunate to play with you for many years called the New Standards. Well, first called the New Standards, and then the GNU Standards, and then the Canoe Standards, if I'm not mistaken. Now, that band had a vision to play music that was not standards, but in a jazz form, in that we had the opportunity to improvise over them. And I know that Sting and the Police were a big influence here for you. I wonder if there's any of those other areas that you feel like touching on or where you might like to go next.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, actually, that band name for me came out of there was a Herbie Hancock album that
Hmm.
came out in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, called The New Standard, where Herbie Hancock and a bunch of other fantastic jazz musicians played everything from Peter Gabriel to Prince to Stevie Wonder to every style of music. So that was really inspiring that, hey, if those guys can do that, maybe we can try that too. Um,
And of course,
yeah.
it's
Sorry.
interesting. Sorry, just to even backpedal, just for those of you or us who don't really think about that term like a standard. I was thinking about that just the other day. Like, so standards become they're standard in the repertoire. They're common, but where did they come from? So a lot of times they came from the pop world in terms of the Great American Songbook of musicals,
Right.
Tin Pan Alley, these
Yeah.
wonderful composers who, just like you, someone would say, "Hey, I need a character song for the girl who's going to win the beauty pageant,"
Right.
and all of a sudden that song's got a hook to it, and it becomes the standard.
Yeah.
that has such a beautiful melody that musicians love to improvise over it for many years. And so that was something that you exposed me to a lot of beautiful music, and it also gave people a way in who maybe weren't that familiar with jazz music. I would hear people say, "Well, wait a second, are they playing Big Old Jet Airliner, or what's that tune they're playing? Is that a Michael Jackson tune?" People have the opportunity to hear when you play, uh, because it's something that's familiar, but you're presenting it in a new way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that even goes back to our high school playing too with Damien and Chad. We were doing Led Zeppelin, or there was a couple other pop tunes that we would play, and they would. It was with the idea that the jazz musicians of the time were playing the pop songs of the day and turning them into improvisational vehicles, and so why would you not do that? Otherwise, you're sort of, unless it's a super hip audience, there's a risk of alienating the audience, which always freaks me out. It's one of the hardest things to play for an audience that isn't interested in what you're doing.
Amen.
We wanted a country band or whatever that is. Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me where you might like to dip our feet in now.
Gosh, I don't know. I don't know. Peter's whining in the background about some live music, but I don't know. But I don't know.
Yeah.
If I should pay him any mind.
No, never. But it could be a great time for a live piece.
A live tune. I'm a little nervous about this because I heard this the other day. Great piano player, great New Orleans piano player named James Booker, who is like, I shouldn't even say his name, and I didn't put him on the list because I haven't been influenced by him, because it's going to take me another 15 years for that to sink in, because he's just the Bach of rock kind of thing. He's playing on a lot of those old 50s R&B tracks, as well as the 70s and 60s hits, and he's an amazing solo player. So and so sorry, I just saw the note from Mike Matza. Hi, Mike.
Michael Matza. Hi, Mike. Thanks for watching.
Anyways, I heard him playing this tune, and it made me laugh because it's a kind of a cheesy song. I thought it was a cheesy song, so maybe I should just play it. And
yes,
this is
please.
a word that we're not allowed to say at Kelby's house, so I apologize for.
That's right.
There's language warnings.
Yeah, man, Juno's gonna get you.
Also, there's a groove here that I've been working on. And so, Peter, just don't listen for a second. Okay, leave me alone. There's a lot of left hand going on here for bass players. You might want to just turn it down or off or something, because this will drive you crazy, bass players. Time to spend an evening with me, and if we go someplace to dance, I know that there's a chance you won't be leaving with me. Then afterwards we drop into a quiet little place and have a drink or two, and then I go and spoil it all by saying something stupid like I love you. I can see it in your eyes, you still despise the same old lies you heard the night before. Just a line to you, for me it's true, and never seemed so right before. I practice every day to find some clever words to say to make the meaning come true. But then I think I'll wait until the evening gets late and I'm alone with you. The time is right, your perfume fills my head, the stars are red and all the night's so blue. And then I go and spoil it all by saying something stupid like I love you. See it in your eyes, you still despise the same old lies you heard the night before. And though it's just a line to you, for me it's true and never seemed so right before. Well, I practice every day to find some clever words to say to make the meaning come true. But then I think I'll wait until the evening gets late and I'm alone with you. The time is right, your perfume fills my head, the stars get red and oh, the night's so blue. And then I go and sport it all by saying something stupid like I love you. I love you. I love you.
Yeah, all right.
I got nervous. I could feel it. The groove is such a sacred thing. Oh my God.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's pretty. Hey, Peter Dow says, great, Brooke.
Aw, thanks, Petey.
P-Dog. Peter, of course, the bass player in the Canoe Standers.
The bass player in almost every band in town, really.
That's also true.
Yeah.
Right on, Brother Rock. So again, what an interesting thing to bring it back to your conversation earlier about like this kind of like swinging kind of movement feel kind of in the cracks, this groove that feels good, that makes us happy, and then you tell us a story on top. I love it. Beautiful. Thank you. I'm so glad we got to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so now where do you take us to? Could it be anything?
Well,
got everything.
I'm just gonna look down the list here. There's just, there's so much music, and I'm one of the things I think that's really important that I didn't know about, and I was kind of, because of my eclectic tastes, and I was really surprised that I didn't know about it. So there's a couple things that I came across later that I'd love to share, that I feel like, I'm not sure how many people are actually listening right now, but hopefully all 9 of them should know about it, or however many there are. We got 5. Mom, are you still there? Anyways, Mom, you should know about this. Let's go to Sentimental Journey, and it's number 26 on the 10 song countdown.
Oh, great.
Esquivel, Juan Garcia Esquivel, Mexican big band arranger. I heard this walking into Long and McQuaid one day. I think Dave Simons was working there, and I asked him, "What is this?" Because I didn't know this existed. It's big band music with a sense of humor and a Latino flavor. And oh gosh, can't say enough. Esquivel, go ahead. You can fade that out, Christine. Thanks. Although Kelby disappeared, so I'm not sure. We'll see what goes on there.
Oh, I don't go far.
You don't go far.
Am I back?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
wow. Eh?
So and there's a whole body of his work. Like I've found myself, I've got over 100 tunes myself, but I think there's more than that. And they're all crazy and brilliant and funny. There's just so much joy. But yeah, Esquivel. Apparently he worked at out of Vegas for a while.
Huh.
But yeah, it's a whole thing. I wish I read Spanish, because I think there's literature on that down there, but I just don't know about it.
Wow, neat.
So hearing that kind of blew my mind, and again, kind of opened the doors. Like, what are the rules there? There's a vocal jazz group. There's slide guitar. There's a weird instrument made out of popsicle sticks or something. Like, what is that? Bass trombones. Like, oh my gosh, so incredible. Hey, thanks, Al. Nice to see your name in there. So that was one. And then on a similar note, like the joy of that music just really fired me up. And again, I was not mad at the world, but I was like really surprised, like, why didn't I know about this? And then just gradually opening these different packages, these gifts that time gradually unleashes for you in music. Another one, which is sort of ridiculous because it was annoying, it was a hit, number 27 on the list, is Mambo number 5. So this was a hit in like 99 or 2000 or something. And it was a sample, I found out later, of Pere Prado's Mambo number 5. So this is Lou Bega doing Mambo number 5. So if you just play a hair of this, Christine, just to give us a sense, and people will probably feel slightly nauseous shortly.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mambo number 5.
I only say nauseous because it was overplayed.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Everybody in the car, so come on, let's ride to the liquor store around the corner. The boys say they want some gin and juice, but I really
gotta play it
don't
until the sample.
Beer buzz like I had last week. I must stay deep, cause talk is cheap. I like Angela, Pamela, Sandra, and Rita. And as I continue, you know they're getting sweeter. So what can I do? I really bag you, my lord. To me, flirting is just like a sport. Anything fly, it's all good. Let me jump in, please sing in the trumpet. A little bit of Monica in my life. A little bit of Erica by my side. A little bit of Rita's all I...
But that whole with a with the saxophones doing that there, I was like, what is this? Like, this feels like Lou Bega did not make that. What is that? And so it took me a long time to figure out that was called mambo music. And there really was a number, Mambo number 5, and it was a standard and everybody else in the world knew it except me. And so that was really cool to come across Pere Prado. And I think that was through the library CD collections, but there's a couple of those in there. Christine, I think the next track on the list is actually Pere Prado's version that was sampled by the Lou Bega. So check this out, because what I love about this is it swings, but it's got the Latino thing going on. And then it's kind of got this attitude of fire and joy. I don't know. And also the hot girl on the cover. Gosh. Bye, Awesome, we can play that. And on top of that, there's this guy yelling, "Ah!" Why did that happen? And then you go and listen to some of those old Ray Charles recordings with the big band, like Kelby and Peter and I do a version of One Mint Julep. But if you listen to the big band version of One Mint Julep, Ray Charles is going, "Ah," because of that guy, because of Pere Prado's version, because his big band was huge, and I just didn't know about it. So anyway, so it turned out that there were more Mambos. There's Mambo number 8, which is also a great song. So just that joy of and hearing the swing and hearing all the different versions of like the evolution of North American music kind of coming together in that for me anyways. Stuff I love.
Beautiful.
The horns. Yeah.
So I want to ask you just a question that doesn't really have anything to do with your playlist in a way, but tell me about Ellington. Tell me about Ellington and Basie and how they were for shaping you. Is that more of this kind of sound? I know that attitude is such an important thing for you. Having worked we haven't even talked about the swing band that you used to lead, or what's the band called? El Super Bando.
El Super Bando. That's
the
right.
contemporary version of that, but
it was the El Super Bando.
The El Super Bando.
Just to emphasize the Spanish is a second language. Yes. So I don't Ellington, I haven't really done too much work. I did a couple of transcriptions but I love that. And I love the idea of him having the different personalities in the band that are unique, not a horn section that sounds like all five saxes sounding like one, like not super sax, but the unique voices within the section.
Hmm.
That's my taste. I really
Those
appreciated that.
unique musical characters, those
Yeah,
personalities in the
and
band.
sort of forging the rules.
Mm.
He doesn't do the basic standard arranging techniques that most of the following arrangers would do. He kind of was mixing these things up, and apparently all the players had their parts in their heads, and they'd change them up as they needed to, and everyone was so musical. And then the bassy stuff, understanding those riffs, like that was a riff based band, and even that. Just those all those kind of riffs
Mhm.
that are sort of the basic vocabulary. I don't know if there is a book out there, but if I ever got around to writing something like that, it'd be just cool to have a catalog of like the essential riffs that everybody knows, and basically just transcribe the 1930s Count Basie big band book and break them into separate riffs. So I love that. And on top of that, the aspect of the swing and the machine working together.
Mhm.
And it's funny because it's such a funny dream, isn't it? Like it's 2020. We can't even get a gig as a solo musician in this current environment, let alone a 22-piece big band or whatever. Like, will that ever happen again? Is it that was a passing time? Or I just love the idea that that was the people's music, and people would come out to a dance at their community hall and pay 25 cents or whatever they would afford, and there'd be this big band of fire there. That's a pretty incredible. Maybe that'll happen again because we have pretty great community bands.
We definitely do. And I don't know. I mean, it's a fascinating time we're in. I mean, the idea that we can't even shake each other's hands at the moment. I mean,
Mhm. Let
it's
alone
something.
do a swing dance, a
Yeah,
do-si.
no, no,
Yeah.
yeah, leave it any space. I mean, it's a beautiful thing, and I think we're all missing it. Even those of us who didn't dance, who
Yeah.
didn't social dance before.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's a fascinating time for our culture to, if we can, to come back to that stuff that maybe we lost through Netflix and whatever came before Netflix.
Well, totally. I feel like that's been part of the source of a lot of my joy during this COVID time has been just going back and playing piano and practicing basic rhythms on a practice pad. And there's just so many essential things that music is a gift that kind of gives you that centering ability as well, right?
Yeah,
And I
yes, it,
enjoy sharing it with people. I really miss that, but I've also really enjoyed the time of just listening, and even making this list for this program tonight was like, wow, there's so much great music. I could
mm,
just stay home and listen to this forever and then try to learn how to play it. And I guess I should go outside and see people, but
yeah. Hey, sorry. Speaking of sharing with people, I don't even know where the time has gone, but
yeah.
we still have 28 pieces that we would love to play for you all. So if you don't mind, just stay with us. We're gonna know. We do have
Going
time,
all night.
or as you often say from the stage, we don't have time for one more, but we're gonna play it anyways.
All
So,
right, let us.
Brooke, is there a piece now? I know that Trout Thursday
Oh gosh.
could be an interesting route to go, and was at least requested by one person. But you might have something else you'd like to leave us with. It could be one of your own.
Actually, you know what? Like Trout Thursday is a silly holiday my friends and I invented, and there you can go to the website, my Bandcamp, Brooke Maxwell .bandcamp, or just Google Brooke Maxwell, and I think it's the first one that comes up. And
Okay.
Trout Thursday is a silly song, and it's really fun, and it's sort of inspired by Beck and eclecticism and home recording. But I'd love to use this time to highlight a track from an album that I'm just so excited is Canadian and exists.
Yes, please.
There's a great guitar player named Kevin Bright
Hmm.
out of Toronto, and I don't know very much about him, but I am a super fan. And I saw this video he posted a while back. This album just came out of the same name. It's called Stella Bella Strata. Do I have that on my list? I think I do somewhere. Hopefully I do. Yeah, there it is. It's number 33, Christine. And it has so many of the elements of, like, if I ever get a chance to record some original music again, I aspire to this level of sort of joy and wackiness and virtuosity and sort of eclectic rule breaking.
All right.
Kevin Bright. Yeah. And the
Now,
video is pretty fun too.
now before we launch into it, just in case people sign off at this point, I just want to say, Brooke, what a great pleasure it's been to get to hear some of this music. I'm always so inspired and surprised when I get together with a musician who I've had the good fortune to know for many years, and to hear some of the music that has inspired you that I didn't know, or hear some of those pieces in your musical puzzle. So I'm really grateful that you took the time to put this list together. And I think a lot of people who know you from all your different hats that you wear in the community, things that you do that are important to you, that you bring to the community, like the Neighborhood Hootenanny Time Machine, or like your work with Namaste, or your work with uh, Atomic Vaudeville, or many people who have seen Ride the Cyclone. It's so great to get a little window into what you do and what you love and what were your early loves. So thank you so much from all of us for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Oh, a pleasure. Well, and thanks so much for making this happen, Kelby, and James Bay United and Gordon Miller and Christine, because it's cool. It's a wonderful thing to. You guys are keeping the ball in the air. It's very appreciated in the music community, and hopefully the audience out there
Yeah, we'll
as
share it with our
well.
friends. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. Well, I remember, I mean, Tuesday Night Jazz at the church, it started by word of mouth. So this opportunity to dig into musicians is another word of mouth thing. So check it out. We've got some beautiful, beautiful ideas coming up, so please stay tuned and check us out again. Share this with your friends if you like. But from all of us at Tuesday Night Jazz at the Church, from Gordon Miller, Christine Chapea, our very special guest tonight, Brooks Maxwell, and myself, Kelly McNair, thanks so much. And Brooke has this special tune that he wanted to share with us. This is Kevin Bright, Stella Bella Strata. And you were saying that this inspires you in terms of, can you recap it? I couldn't quite say what you said.
I don't know if I could say it again either, but he's a virtuoso musician. I think he's a guitar player with Nora Jones for years, but he's just weirder than that. And this is just so much his unique voice. It has so much joy and musicality and eclectic. There's an eclectic group of instruments that you wouldn't necessarily expect. And again, I think they all would consider themselves jazz musicians. They're just top tier players, but they're sort of, I don't know if they're being naughty or not, but they're playing music that you wouldn't always expect at a jazz festival. But I wish all the success for Kevin Bright. I think this whole album is fantastic.
Right on. Okay,
Yeah.
well, thank you. Thank you, Brooke Maxwell. Thank you, everyone. Here it is.
Thanks, guys.
Buonasera, io essa, tutto bella, vado proprio di lì, io, raffinata. Io dice, perché no? Viene qui, ma bella.
Thank you, Brother Rock.
Yeah, man.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Good night. Thank you, Christine. We'll see you again next time.